You're listening to Reignite, a podcast that is a podcast. I'm Frankie.
And I am Matt, aka Stormageddon.
Honestly, I have no idea how to start these off at the end of the season because I have no idea what we're going to talk about. My brain is soup.
Yeah.
Would that this game were soup sometimes?
Yeah. So we have reached the end of Dragon Age Origins and all its DLC included. It is a long road, but we are here in episode 30 to discuss our overall thoughts on the game, our prep for Dragon Age 2, some of the character creation decisions we're going to pre-make like we did in previous versions. Like, it's funny, in Mass Effect we didn't have to do that because we had to be human, and mostly the choices don't matter in the sense that it's small story additions, like whether your parents are alive or dead, if you have family or not, or whatever, and certain missions would happen in 3 based on it. But like in the Dragon Age games, the race you choose and the class you pick have huge implications in the story. And so we kind of have to discuss those choices ahead of time because we don't want both of us playing human warriors and not seeing half the game, essentially.
The thing with Origins versus 2 is that in Origins, there's all of these choices that have all of these different beginnings. And with 2, there are only 2 real choices that impact your beginning.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to focus on when we start figuring out our shit about 2.
Yeah. But I think first we'll start with an overall discussion of what we thought about Dragon Age Origins after revisiting it and all its DLC. Maybe talk about our favorite companions, moments, NPCs, favorite DLC, since there's so much of it. And then, again, move into the things for the upcoming season. I still don't know how I feel about Dragon Age Origins as a whole. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed our time with it. I didn't actively dread playing it. I did when we were going back to it, but I didn't actively have a bad time. I will say that by the time we got to Awakening, I was kind of ready for it to be over. Only because in the same way that with Mass Effect, by the end of the 3rd game, the combat was so... the 3rd games had the best combat of all of them, but even by the end of the 3rd game, it was it's the same kind of scenarios, same kind of boss battles, same kind of combat. I'm ready to move on. I hit that point a lot faster, I feel like, in Origins, because the combat can be so samey with some few exceptions.
Yeah, I agree. My issue with Origins combat, and again, we acknowledge that this is an issue of the time that it was created. Games have progressed a lot since then, yada, yada, yada. Yes, we know we can still voice the things that we don't enjoy. Just heading off.
Yeah.
But my issue with it was largely the auto fight mechanic where you just hit A and then your character goes and attacks a thing. And I don't know, I just didn't enjoy it, and it makes it feel very disassociative. You're not actively invested in what is happening.
Right. With Mass Effect, there'll be comparisons because it's the entire franchise from this publisher that we've done already, or developer rather, and publisher. I guess EA published all of them also. But in the Mass Effect games, you have to pull the trigger to pull the trigger, right? You press the trigger every time you want to fire, so it's more active, it's more engaged, and you have all these abilities and stuff. Whereas I mentioned this a little bit, I think, in the last episode, the biggest problem with Dragon Age Origins is it doesn't know if it wants to be a CRPG like Baldur's Gate or an action RPG like so many other games. It's because the auto shoot is reminiscent of very much a kind of like a Diablo game or CRPG, and the abilities are you click and then they activate. They don't even activate instantly in say an action game. They are more you click the thing and the animation happens and it kicks off. It does feel very separate, almost like playing an MMO, honestly. It feels very akin to a World of Warcraft or an EverQuest, or in the sense that you're auto firing while pressing buttons to do abilities, but none of it is super engaging. And with my character, at least with the Ranger, by the end, it's I summon pet, I start auto fire, I use 1 or 2 abilities, and that's it. There was not, And again, we're playing on easy, so like there's less strategy on easy, but I also feel like on the harder difficulties, it's less about strategy and more about luck a little bit, just because of it's not a well-designed combat system. I think that ultimately what this game gets wrong is it's trying to be too many things at once. I think the greatest successes in 2 and Inquisition, at least, is that it very much like plants its feet in the more action RPG camp and makes the combat more engaging, at least, even if it does also still get a little dull. It's at least more engaging than this game is. And I think we acknowledged pretty early on that the strength of this game was not the combat or the boss fights, although some of them are cool.
The strength of this game is very much narration, character development. It is not combat, but there is this element of like dice rolling, I feel like. I've had this experience more in Dragon Age 2 than in Dragon Age Origins, but sometimes you will enter a fight and it will just be difficult for no reason. And then you'll re-enter the fight and it's like a stat has changed somewhere that makes it just that much easier for you. It's bonkers. I don't know the mechanics behind it, and I never will.
Yeah, it goes back to the CRPG conversation, which I think is very present in people's mind because of Baldur's Gate 3. Like, for the most part, Baldur's Gate 3 and its predecessors, the dice rolls are somewhat apparent. Like, there are hidden dice rolls like any kind of D&D campaign, even tabletop. Like, there are dice rolls the DM is making that you don't know about, that if you pass, like, the passive stuff, then things happen. And, like, there are hidden dice rolls in these games too, but I think the difference here is that you don't really know any of, like, I think that's going on in the background in Dragon Age Origins and 2, but you don't know any of it. Like, the conversation stuff a little bit because you're boosting certain stats, and like same for like lockpicking and everything, but even that stuff didn't feel super consistent. And now again, this is the first game BioWare has done like this. It's the first fantasy game they made in this style. It does pull from previous games like Mass Effect and like Knights of the Old Republic, things like that. So it's not completely new from what they've done before, but it was the first Dragon Age game, and they didn't know what they were really looking for. I think it's admirable that they tried to make this both approachable for console and for PC, though I hated it on console. The thing that is bothering me now is I think that 2 and 3 are better on a controller, and the PC versions do not support controller, and like any of the button mapping you can find for 2 is like it just maps the keyboard buttons to a controller, and it's not quite the same. So we'll have to see with that. I mean, I'll struggle through it however I need to, but yeah, I think ultimately the combat leaves me wanting. And again, also, though, is not what we come to this series for or this podcast. We're obviously here to talk about the narrative and the choices. But I do think that, like, for example, there are no Renegade Paragon action equivalent in this game, right? There are no...
Yeah, not really. There's no clear morality tree.
Yeah. And there's no action choices, right? Like, all the battles are battles. There's rarely choice to make in battle. If you are deciding to kill someone or react to something, it's the battle ends, a conversation happens, and you make a choice. Whereas in the Mass Effect games, especially 2 and 3, there are those moments that kind of spice up combat where if you're paying attention, you could do a cool thing one way or the other based on the trigger you hit or whatever. And so that also makes this a little less engaging, because I know in Origins, when I get into a battle, I'm going to auto-fire till things fall over, and then I'm going to move over to the next thing. It's like the attention isn't really warranted in the same way other games do. Because Mass Effect was a shooter, the first game even required more paying attention because there's no auto-attack. If you are hunkered behind cover, you are there until you do something about it, and they will find you eventually. So yeah. So I think overall, I would I would not ever replay this game for the combat, but I am glad that I re-engaged with the story. I am bummed that I rolled Dwarf only because I did Dwarf once before. You were right that the non-noble route was very different, but it's still very much like it would have been nice to see something else, but this is how we did it. Thankfully, at least in the next 2 games, that matters a little less. For better and worse, right? It does add more options and replayability to this game, but it also does make it a little a little daunting to cover, and it's why I think our coverage, even as thorough as we tried to be, is nowhere near as thorough as you could be with a game like this.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just, I don't know. I feel like we're low key beating a dead horse.
Yeah, a little bit. I think, again, I think we made it pretty clear how we feel about this game. I know that you are a bigger lover of it than I am, but it is neither of our favorites.
I love the story.
Yeah.
Like, the story is so good. The combat sucks. Combat's not great.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But let's talk origins.
Okay.
Like actual origins. So you did the outcast dwarf. I did the human mage. But there are lots of other ones that we didn't get to do. If you had free reign, what would you have chosen?
Well, because I've now done dwarf twice, I would probably pick one of the elven beginnings, because I feel like I have no idea what those are even like, and so I'd be curious to try them. Probably mage, because I've yet to play a mage in this franchise except a little bit of Inquisition, though I didn't get far. So probably either an elven mage or just an elven rogue or ranger.
Elven Rogue is pretty fun. I've done both Dalish Elf and I've done City Elf. City Elf is brutally tragic.
Yeah. I mean, I had assumed just based on the glimpses of it we get through the main campaign.
It is especially tragic if you play as a femme City Elf, because you are marginalized in such a brutal and personal way by the nobility of Denerim. And it's, makes my skin crawl, but it is very well written. But also, can we stop having plot lines that focus around the rape of women?
I mean, unfortunately, at this
was
time,
well before.
Yeah,
yes, I know.
And I mean, even still, they're not great at telling those kinds of stories. Some games do it better than others. I'll pose the same question to you. If you could, since you've played this game more than me, is there any background you haven't done yet?
I think the only background I hadn't done was mage, and
Okay.
I just did it.
Yeah.
I've done dwarf noble. I've done dwarf outcast. I've done human, which is interesting because human is almost the canonical in a way.
Yeah.
And I've done both elves. So yeah, it was just mage that I hadn't done. I think my favorite is Dalish elf. It's because I think the Dalish are cool. And, if you play as a rogue or a warrior, it just makes sense. I like it.
Nice.
I like the background. Okay. So we met a lot of people in the world of Dragon Age. Let's talk Origins companions.
Okay.
Who was your fave? Because I already know how you feel about Awakenings companions. I already know.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know that I have a standout besides Shale. Like, I love Shale because it's Shale. Like, she's just such a fun character. They are a fun character, I guess. But Zevran definitely grew on me this time because I had no experience with him last time. I barely used him. He turned on me and I killed him in my first playthrough. And he was a very interesting character, like you had alluded to, if I gave him the time and ended up pursuing a relationship with him. I really don't like. I think I have less favorite characters. Like we've already beaten to death how much we don't like Oghren, which again is hard for me because I love Stephen Bloom. And
Stephen Bloom is great, but sometimes he voices shitty people.
Yeah, and I think it ultimately makes Oghren, I think, a good character in the sense that we have an emotional reaction to him, right?
Yes, I get that.
And so like there's that. But like I think all the characters that were kind of nothing burgers to me in the past, I got to do more with in this playthrough, and so I got to see more sides of them, but I think my favorites are probably Liliana and Zevran. I think Liliana, it's tied to where these games go a bit, but like I really like her character. I think it's an interesting take on religious belief, and the pursuit of religion and what it compels you to do. And then I think, Zevran is the kind of fun, cheeky character that I would often gravitate towards in other games. And I definitely don't really hate anyone in the way that I did before, because again, I got to spend so much more time with these characters because we went out of our way to pursue companion quests and storylines, and I tried to change my party up. I think my number one non-relationship character is Wynn. Sometimes she baffles me, but I think as a character, like with an arc and as a personality, I do really like her. Her struggle with mortality. Yeah, I think it's really interesting in a way that I kind of just wrote her off in previous playthroughs. I'm really like doing my best to not really give you an answer because I don't think it's just there is no grunt in this game for me, right? There's
no lizard son.
No, there is no Garrus or
none of
Thane.
These are baby.
Yeah, no one in this game jumps out at me as like my number one favorite, like with a bullet. I think when I first played it, I liked Oghren a lot because I thought he was just entertaining in a way that now seeing how kind of sad and destructive he is, I'm like, oh no, I don't like him. But I don't really have like a standout favorite. It's somewhere in between Zevran, Liliana, and Wynn, depending on the day. Zevran more so than others, I think, because I enjoyed pursuing his relationship as well. Because it wasn't cliche gay either. It was just they fell in love in a way that we don't often see in games. Like overtly queer romances have to have like these cliches that it just felt like two people falling in love in this game, which was kind of neat.
Yeah, like coming out stories are important, but also been there, done that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. What about, I mean, I think I know your clear favorite character, right?
My husband, my golden retriever.
Yeah, I mean, Alistair has been your favorite, I think, since day one with this game, yeah?
He is my sweet man. I love him a lot because he's so soft and gentle, and he has been through so much and had so much taken from him. And he keeps trying so hard to be a ray of sunshine. And to be a character in this tragic world and still have the courage to get up in the morning and say, you know what? I'm still going to do my fucking best.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big deal, you know? And Alistair does that again and again and again. And sure, when you romance him, a lot of it can be attributed to the bond that he has with you as his romantic partner, but also I think friendship too.
Yeah.
Like, I think Emil Warden and Alistair have this strong bond. And like they have this brotherhood that he not clings to, but like he relies on because he lost all of his other family, his found family. So you're all he really has left. And he's going to fight like hell to make sure he doesn't lose you too.
Yeah.
And I love that about him. I think he's one of the few like truly good people in this world because a lot of them are shitty.
Yeah. I mean, even some of our favorite characters.
Not good.
Yeah, even some of our favorite characters, you could argue, are not great people. Like Morrigan is entertaining, but also very fucked up.
Like, she's not a great person, but also I understand why she's not.
No, of course,
person.
absolutely.
She's been through a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And like, I don't really like Liliana, but that's probably because her like religious fervor kind of puts me off personally.
Sure.
Even though she's not very strictly like. She's not very strict to the chant.
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't think that mages are inherently evil.
Right.
But also, like, her attachment to it makes me feel a little uncomfortable. So I'm just like, meh. So, and I also, like we said, I hate Oghren. I think he's a bad person. I don't know why he's in our party. Sten is very neutral. I feel very neutrally about Sten.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Sten more this time just because I spent more time trying to like get his sword and like hear his backstory and how you earn his respect. Like I liked that narrative arc, even though it doesn't amount to too much in the broader game, and feels so detached from the second game, which feels stupid now, knowing what I know. But we'll get to that.
How about a favorite moment from Origins overall?
Favorite moment? That's a little harder. I mean, like I do like a lot of the dwarven storytelling. I mean, it's the only origin storytelling I know at this point, but I like how it develops and how you go back and like, the political intrigue is fun in fantasy games. It's why I think a lot of fantasy games have it. But I think my favorite moment is honestly the ending. I think that this game kind of like the build up to the fight with the archdemon, how tragic things get in that final battle and pushing through to the end and the decisions you have to make to get there, I think are really interesting. And I like how they play out. The battle itself is sort of interesting, but combat aside, I really do like the conclusion of the base game because I think it's really well done. I'm trying to think of another pivotal moment. I do like when you get to I like a lot of the companion stories. Specifically, I like Zevran's where you confront the Antivan crows and defend, and like he shows up to fight against them with you and backs you up, and like you free him by killing them and stuff like that. Like I do think that's a fun character moment. I'd say those are the two biggest ones that stuck with me the most. What about you?
Honestly, I think my favorite moment is a romance moment where Alistair gives your warden a rose, and it's your opportunity to decide if you want to pursue this as a romance or not. Because it's just such a sweet moment.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, it's so soft. And he's like, I saw this beautiful thing and it reminded me of you. And I didn't want it to get destroyed by all of the darkness. And that is something that he hopes for you as well. And it reinforces how much I love him.
Yeah.
Because it's such a soft and caring thing. And to be cared for that genuinely and that fervently, it's a rare thing.
Yeah. I in a world where, especially in video games at the time, most men had to be the like machismo, muscular, I'll defend you with my life kind of character, which, Alistair can have those moments, especially in great conflict. It's nice that he gets to be the Caden Alenko of this game, effectively, in the sense that he is okay being soft and showing his softer side.
100%. He's such a good boy. I love him. It's my sweet cheese.
He is your sweet cheese. Do you have a favorite NPC in the
Dagna?
Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling.
She's my favorite. I love her so much.
She is pretty great.
Like, I'm a PhD researcher, and I'm not going to choose the person who just wants to study something because it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, yes, absolutely, Dagna. I love her. I love her to bits.
Yeah, it's pretty on brand for you to pick her. I have to say, having now played through the game, it's hard to choose one without the other, but I think Loghain and Anora are my favorite NPCs, not because I like them, but because I like their story. Like, I think
they're compelling.
They're compelling characters. And like, it's very easy for us to pick on Loghain and be like, why is he so evil? But then getting even to those final moments, I was like, that story is really compelling. And I do like how Anora is very much like not to be trifled with, right? Like, it can be viewed as this bitchiness, but it's also viewed as this strength of like, I'm going to do what I need to. And if it means screwing over the warden, I'm going to do that too. Like, she's not, even though she does still kind of, in the end, want her father back and may not get him, she is still shown as a character of strength in a way that other queens and princesses in other games are not. And I'm grateful for that. And it really sticks with me. And Loghain was a compelling villain. I think he was still done dirty, and we didn't get enough of his backstory. And yes, I know there are books that follow some of his backstory and stuff, and I wish we got more of that in the game. But I still think even with all of that, he was easy to hate, but still pretty compelling in a way that I feel like some of the villains in the other games are not. It's tough. I only have like Swiss cheese memory of the other two games because it's been a while. But I feel like Loghain is the more like a villain's villain in a way that other characters, like in Dragon Age Inquisition, when we get to it, it feels more Disney villain kind of cartoony. But we'll see. I mean, I'll reaffirm that thought when we get there. But yeah, I think those two would have to be my favorites.
I feel that Loghain is a realistic villain. He is someone who fought for his country. He is someone who believes in his country, believed in his king, and he watches as the work that he believes he contributed to is being, quote, undone by someone who wasn't even there, and like someone who doesn't know everything that they went through in order to liberate their country, not realizing that the times have moved on and politics are different now, and you maybe want an allegiance with these people because the world is changing and you have to change with it, and he's just not someone who can change that way. He's a very real person in that way, whereas the villains of Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition have an element of reality to them. I find it more difficult to point to like real people that behave that way.
Right. They become more fanciful, more larger than life.
Yeah.
Which there's
like
nothing
they become
wrong.
More exaggerated.
Correct. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it definitely it makes them less compelling in moments. I mean, there are other plot issues, I think, when we get to them that could add to that. Because I will say up front, I don't think any of the Dragon Age games handle narrative as well as the Mass Effect franchise does. I'm a little biased also, which is part of it, and we'll talk about it more as we go. And like, it's the nature of this podcast to compare the two, because we started this podcast because of Mass Effect. We decided to do Dragon Age, but Mass Effect is the first love of both of us. And I do think they are the better games holistically. But for different reasons. And so we'll get to
that. We spent a lot of time doing DLC. Did you come out of that with a favorite?
I mean, as long in the tooth as it was, I did like Awakening. Ultimately, I think I liked playing through Awakening for the most part. I don't think its narrative does a good job of resolving itself, as we discussed in the last episode. But I do like the characters a lot. My overall favorite character in all of Dragon Age is in the DLC, Injustice. I'm not happy where his story goes, but we'll get into that. But I liked him as a character. I thought it was a cool idea to have the spirit of justice trapped in the dead body of a warden. I think it made for something very interesting. And I think it's my favorite DLC because we spent so much time with it, and the characters and some of the storytelling supersedes its shortcomings overall. I still don't think it's good DLC comparatively. It's one of the better ones. I can easily, without a doubt, tell you my least favorite DLC, which was the Dragonspawn.
The Darkspawn?
Darkspawn DLC. It's super easy.
Yeah, that wasn't a good one.
But I do think that all of the DLC is pretty compelling. I do like the Liliana DLC a lot, too, because I like her as a character.
Liliana's song was actually, surprisingly, my favorite DLC because I felt that it did what DLC should do and added depth to the story.
Yeah.
That you don't need in order to feel like you were playing a complete story.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I do like the Morgan DLC also. I feel like, actually, you know what? The more that I talk about this, I think, while I like the characters in Awakening, I think the Witch Hunt DLC is my favorite. Just because talking through it, I realize, although it ends abruptly, and it's what I was confusing with the end of Origins in the last game, even though it ends so abruptly and like you don't even get to recover the items you're there for, it just ends. I do like the characters. I do like who pal around with in that DLC, and I do think it's an interesting resolution to Morgan's story. That, spoiler alert, she'll show up again. I don't think anyone's surprised by that. And like, I like this kind of question mark moment that then will lead to however and if we see her, if and when we see her again. And so I think I'm changing my answer to a Witch Hunt. I think I like that DLC better. Also, it's shorter.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Totally valid. Any other points you want to go over? Questions you want to ask?
I guess I don't. Out of 10 rating is so cheesy and almost pointless. But I am curious, I guess, that more broadly in the pantheon of BioWare games and maybe just RPGs in general, does Dragon Age Origins rank higher on your list or lower on your list? Because
After doing it for the podcast?
after doing it for the podcast, yeah, does it change how you feel about it, or do you still kind of feel the same? And like, is it a favorite game, or is it just kind of a game that you like, but it's not in your top 10?
I don't think my feelings about it have changed. I think I will always love the narrative of it. I think part of any frustration that I've had with it has been sort of the having to stop and kind of talk about it in pieces because of the combat.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't have to stop and talk about it, then I could speed through it
And you
and
would,
like not think about it.
right, you would only think about the narrative.
Yeah. But having to stop means having to talk about the combat and the combat that frustrates me. So I think that was the only thing. But overall, that doesn't really matter in the long run. I still love it. It's in my heart a good game and a game that sets up a lot of things and it addresses some really important conversations. Like there is the issue of marginalization, there's the issue of racism, there's the issue of religious extremists, there's terrorism, there's moral questions and analyzing your ethics, and I think it facilitates those conversations in a really provoking way.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's definitely not in my top 10 games of all time. I don't think it cracks that list just because there's a lot of games out there. I think ultimately I like this game, but I land on it just being okay. It's a fine game. Like,
that's valid, and I respect your choices.
Yeah, it's hard to say it's good only because I think the failings are so glaring. And it's not even close to my favorite in even this franchise. But I do agree that the storytelling is exceptional. There are definite moments of writing that are exceptional, but all in all, the sum of its parts don't add up in a way that make it my favorite, especially since I don't think it's even the best in its own franchise. But I think as far as options for story paths and divergence, like games like Dragon Age Origins walked so Baldur's Gate 3 could run. And yes, I know, of course, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 also had tons of choices and you couldn't see everything. But I think Dragon Age Origins is in that pantheon of games where you have to make choices. You will lock yourself out of parts of the game, though not as egregious as games that come later. But like, that's okay. That you can't see everything, and that's okay. And I like that part of it, because as much as we love to laud Mass Effect, until the third game, it's kind of hard to miss out on stuff. For the most part, you can see almost everything, unless you just blatantly ignore stuff, right? But you're not locked out of it. Like, if you don't do a side mission like the moon or whatever, like, you just missed it. But like, whereas in 3, there are definitive choices you make that lock you out of other things. People can die, whatever. I think this game does experiment more with that. And is actually a big focal part of 2 is that you can't do everything. There are clear paths in that game. And I like it for that. I like that we miss out on stuff, and that's why us choosing the different origins, or like even me deciding to not take that thief Nathaniel along with us in the DLC, bred these different moments. And I like that kind of stuff. And we do get them in this game.
I agree. Well, we ought to get ready for Dragon Age 2.
Yeah, so Dragon Age 2 famously had some trouble development, was rushed, and is a much linear game than the previous games. There are still choices to make, but you are only in one area for the majority of the game. Also notably about Dragon Age 2 is you play as an existing singular character named Hawk, who you can choose the gender of and the class of, but is a human with a family at the start of the game, and you are this character of legend who becomes of legend, who's a part of this game.
Also, they have a voice.
Also, they have a voice. They speak. Yeah, from this point on, the main characters will have a voice and will speak.
A familiar voice.
Yes, several familiar voices over the course of the rest of the franchise. But so we will not be choosing our race or origin. The origin story is identical for both of our playthroughs. It's the choices we make after that are really impactful. And as we've alluded to in previous episodes, mages play a huge part in this story in a way that they only sort of did in the first game. They are much more integral to the overall plot of this game. And so that means that one of us has to play a mage. In one, I think we would have still had a good time discussing stuff, even if one of us wasn't. But you made the conscious choice to be a mage, so we could see that stuff, knowing what you know. In this,
I rolled a mage. I didn't make a conscious choice.
I thought you had picked mage, but rolled the race.
I think I picked mage. I don't remember now. I thought I rolled mage.
You might have rolled for it, because I think I picked ranger. I don't think I rolled for it, but I don't remember. I know we rolled for race because you were disappointed that you got human.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. Stupid humans.
But yeah, so we do have to decide who's going to play a mage this time. I mean, I've only previously played through all of Dragon Age 2 once, and I was a femme human warrior, because I'm always a warrior, often in these games. And so I'm open to playing as the mage. Do you want to or not want to play the mage? Like, how are you feeling about this? I feel like we can have a conversation about it.
All in favor of Matt playing the mage. You can't see it, but Humphrey is also raising his hand off screen.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Humphrey is my foster cat, for anyone who does not know that.
Do you just not want to play a mage because you played a mage in the last game?
I really don't want to. Please don't make me.
Okay, I'll play a mage this time. I wanted to play an archer all through our run, but I will acquiesce and I'll play a mage in this game. Also, because knowing what I know about what happens to a certain mage in this game early on, I'm curious how that goes if they're not the mage and you are. Unless there's, because you, so this is early game stuff. Do you pick your siblings' classes, or are they always the classes?
They are what they are.
Oh, okay. So interesting that. So I'm curious how that plays out. Anyway,
I can tell you nothing.
Yes, I know. So I will be playing a mage this playthrough.
I promise you, it is better than in Dragon Age Origins. So
that's good.
It's less frustrating.
I think I will play a male hawk in this only because I played a femme hawk last time. Mm-hmm. Do you have a preconception of what you will play?
I'll probably still play a femme hawk because I have been socialized as female.
Yeah.
So like that's relatable to me.
Yeah.
And I will still view things through the lens of being socialized as female.
Sure. In the way that I do also view a lot of things, having been socialized as a mask presenting person. Also, I just want I want to go through the game with a different voice actor this time to see how it's different. I like to see the different performances. Look, I had a whole new, I've always liked Mark Meer, as I've said many a time, but I definitely enjoyed his performance more, kind of forcing myself to play the male perspective for our playthrough in a way that I was like, he's fine. And I was like, no, he's not fine. He's a very good voice actor. There's the legend that Jennifer Hale is, and then no one can compare to that.
It's just hard when Jennifer Hale is your opposite.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, so we have resolved that you were going to play the mage.
I am going to play the mage, and I am going to play male hawk because that's my preference at this point.
Yeah, and I'll do femme hawk because I think femme hawk is also fun. I love a mask and femme friendship and the bond that you develop with one of the characters as a femme character. I love it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I feel the same way. I think, so playing femme hawk, I made some choices that felt like they were irresistible, and now playing a mask presenting hawk also, there are just some relationship. Like, there is a character I romanced in Dragon Age 2 that I really like, that I don't know that I'm not going to be able to say no to in the same way that you can't say no to Garrus every time. So we'll see if I can resist her wiles this time. Also, just some of Hawk's attitude, from what I remember, this kind of like snarky, standoffish person, was fun as a
That's
femme
Purple
Hawk.
Hawk.
Yeah, that like I'm just curious how that will read as the male Hawk. I always like getting this diversity of voice acting and character development, and so in the same way that I may play a femme Hawk a femme main character in the third game, because I don't think I've done that before. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. So our next episode will be an intro to Dragon Age 2. We'll talk about the characters we created. Do we want to do that like opening mission as well for the first episode? Okay. Like the opening story stuff that gets us to the main area. I think it's only an hour or two, that early mission.
Not very long.
Just to like have our roots as our characters, talk about this origin story and how it starts. And there won't be much to talk about with character creation other than we will, of course, have show art featuring how attractive our characters look, as we often do. But beyond designing our look, which I'm already anticipating being very frustrated with, because I feel like human design in these games is very limited often.
Yeah, it's not great.
But we'll talk about that. And we're hoping to map out this season a little more broadly, have more guests. I'm very excited to take on Dragon Age 2, because as of now, it is my favorite game in the franchise. Could change with the replay, but as of now is my favorite my favorite game in the franchise, so I'm very excited to return to it. Though we'll see if I still feel that way playing it on PC. Although I originally played it on PC also. But it's just, I remember the controls being very frustrating. So if you hated how much I complained in the Mass Effect 2 season, anticipate the same amount of complaining.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about, my love?
I think that's it. So we are a little ahead as far as recording goes. In this moment when we're recording, I don't anticipate a break to gear up for Dragon Age 2. However, we may need that time. If we do, keep an eye on our social media, which we're about to talk about, because if we do need more time than we've generated for ourselves by banking some episodes, we will let you know there. But otherwise, I anticipate there won't be much of a break between these two seasons, because we are kind of geared up to get started. And we know what we're doing for the first episode, which would likely just be the two of us anyway. So, that said, I think that's all I got.
All right. Time to talk about our social meds.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry. I had to bring back a little Alex in this.
I just don't appreciate it.
If you like what you heard here, don't forget to follow us on social media. We're at ReignitePod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook.com/ReignitePod, or you can send us an email at reignitepod@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at Frankie B. Writes and DJ_Stormageddon. On Blue Sky, we're at Frankie B. Writes and just DJ Stormageddon, no underscore. Blue Sky, get at us. We need to get that underscore in their name for the branding. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher if you can. It helps us get seen so other people can find us.
Yep. If people start Googling Dragon Age Origins and you have boosted that algorithm, we become more easily findable, and we are grateful for it. We're also members of the Certain Point of View podcast network. You can visit certainpov.com to find more nerdy podcasts, each with a unique point of view. You can also find a permanent invite link to our Discord server on the website and join in the conversation. You can also find links to our Apple and Spotify for rating and reviewing, as well as the permanent invite link to our Discord server in the show notes down below or to the side, depending on where your app puts show notes. So you can go just click there as well.
This is my last chance to tell you that I'm going to be presenting a paper on why monster hugging is gay over at GIFCON, Glasgow's International Fantasy Conversations, Conjuring Creatures and Worlds. If you're an academical nerd, that might be up your alley, and it's a free online conference, so there's no need to travel to Scotland. That takes place May 15th through the 17th. I will be giving a paper, and I'm also going to be giving a workshop on cozy fantasy storytelling and world building. It's going to be a fun game that a friend, Graham Gens, and I wrote together. So if you have any interest in that, come join us.
Yep, I'll make sure to put a link down in the show notes down below as well, or to the side as we previously discussed. And you can click right through to register for that. As for me, it's business as usual. DJStormageddon.com to find all the cool stuff that I do. If you haven't bought any of my merch, please do. I love it when people buy my merch. Otherwise, the main focus besides this show is fun and games. Jeff and I have been doing some really cool stuff. We've got a bunch of really cool developer interviews lined up, as well as some other really fun coverage based on the game review codes that we've been getting lately, which has been really neat. And if you want to stay in touch with us, the best way to do that is to actually join the Patreon. We have a free tier where you get all of the articles we write and all of the main show episodes and side quests. And then if you pay a little bit of money, you can get shout outs or even bonus episodes. And that's at patreon.com/funandgamespod. Literally any little bit that you can give to the Patreon really helps that show. That's basically it for me as far as promo goes. We also, of course, want to thank the one and only Case Aiken for developing a ton more t-shirt designs that you can find over at certainpov.com or on the Certain POV Teespring. Also, of course, thanks to the same very delightful Case Aiken for designing each episode's show art as well, especially considering I don't think he's current with the game at this point, so he's basically designing on our suggestions and intuition, and I'm very grateful for him for doing that.
And he does a great job.
It's true.
We'd like to thank Radek Wade and Echoes of Oblivion for our theme music.
Yes, this will be the last episode to feature the theme music. We will, as we did at the start of the season, feature the full song, and then come this next season, Season 6, we will have a new song. So stay tuned for that.
Season 6.
I know, right? Saying it out loud, it's like, what? We also, of course, want to thank the one and only Red Spinks for designing our incredible Dragon Age-inspired logo. To see more of his work, you can follow him at Chaos Does Art on Instagram.
For the last time this season, I'm Frankie.
And I am at AK Stormageddon. Remember, Grey Wardens.
In war, victory.
In peace, vigilance.
In death, sacrifice.
Okay, bye.
Let me welcome you to the world of Phaedos, where we all got our stories that made us. Our origins we hold dear, cause they are what made our path become clear. Whether it be a vengeance you seek, or you wish to repay your sins, Duncan will present you with an ultimate test of your will. You shall become a great warden tonight, a great leader who will firmly unite. All of the realm will stop its blight, slay the archdemon and win this fight. Men and women of every race shall get together and stand against a common foe in an upcoming war. But interest is our symbol of hope, and a quest for the end of her sacred ashes. We shall lay down some basic tactics, so everybody's got a distinctive role. It's a party of four against the Darkspawn Horde. Here at the summit I will sound the horn, summon a dragon with a mighty roar, like a dragon born from the Elder Scrolls, with an equally massive lore. Righteous stand before the darkness again, and the maker shall always guide their hand to make every move right and true, every decision and any path you choose. It's time to stem the tide of darkness now, with my companions by my side. In this fight we help each other out, so hear our chant of light. Now let me start with Phalistar, cause he's a guy you should always keep around. His shield won't let you down, a Templar with a light-hearted vibe. Standing as hard as rock, his two-handed street reaching far and wide, crushing his enemies to the ground, as tough as the walls of Ostagar. Yes, it's clear win-win-win-win, when you're in need of some spirit healing, or just a piece of humbling advice from a lady you've seen every corner twice. Liliana, the cutest of bards, master of her Elysian arts. She can be sweet and she can be sharp, her songs will surely captivate your heart. The Witch of the Wild is gonna wild tonight, to test your natural prowess inside, driven by the darker side. That's the type of fun that Morrigan likes, which offers everyone cause he's a wild card. Have a few pints with Oakland in a bar, a pure loyalty you'll always find, and you're my Barry Hound.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun, whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.